Hi, my name is Josie. Have you ever doubted whether something in your life was real or not? Maybe some events only happen in your head? You're probably thinking I'm crazy. Don't jump to conclusions so quickly. Let me tell you my story first. Then you'll understand. My family has always been extremely wealthy. We had a personal cook, a personal gardener, a personal security guard, and a bunch of other staff. And that was the best cook from Europe, the best gardener from Brazil, and the best security guard from China. My father was very demanding of the people around him. Naturally, he also chose only the best of everything for me. I had the most experienced teachers, a famous swimming coach, and I was only friends with children from rich families. My father taught me to have high standards for the people in my life. After all, I deserve the best. When I turned 20, my parents passed away. It felt awful without them, and it took me a long time to get used to living alone. After some time, the pain was gone, and I went back to living the high life. Oh yeah, I was happy. I had the best job, the best high society friends, and also my best friend Amber, also from a rich family. Her parents were famous producers. I had everything, except for one thing. I couldn't find a boyfriend. It's not that I wasn't interested in guys. I just never met anyone I could be satisfied with. It never went further than the first date. Some weren't handsome enough, and some weren't smart enough, and some were just too self-centered. I tried dating actors, scientists, travelers, but none of them were worthy of me. Amber said I was crazy and that there were no perfect guys, but I couldn't help it. I wasn't gonna settle for anything less. One day, I was at home, scrolling through a dating website. I didn't like anyone, but I still hoped I'd see him, the perfect guy. Suddenly, I noticed a strange ad on the website. It said they were selling perfect boyfriends. Quality was guaranteed. I was surprised. What was this kind of joke? I followed the link though, and it opened to a catalog of guys. Oh yeah, they were really perfect. But how could this be? Was I dreaming? I suddenly wondered what the catch was. So I chose the most perfect one and ordered him. It was money well spent. Satisfying my curiosity was definitely worth it. A couple of hours later, my doorbell rang. I opened the door and saw that 2 delivery men had brought a large box to my house. My curiosity grew. I opened the box in my room and found him there, the perfect boyfriend. He smiled and said his name was Eddie and that he was going to be my boyfriend now. How was it possible? He really was perfect. I asked Eddie if he was a robot, but Eddie just laughed and told me he was a real person. It turned out there was an organization that took children from orphanages and raised them to be perfect. It had a fitting name, the Perfect People Corporation. It was incredible. I couldn't believe my luck. On the other hand, nowadays you could buy anything you wanted, even a perfect boyfriend. And I more than deserved it. Eddie stayed with me. A few days later, I found out that not only was he perfectly handsome, but he was also smart, attentive, and witty. He was an excellent cook, played the guitar, and was great with cars. He was truly perfect. A few days after that, he landed a job and immediately got the top manager position. We celebrated his promotion, and he gave me a diamond ring. It's not that I needed money or expensive gifts, but a guy who could provide for not only himself, but also for his girlfriend, was truly a treasure. I was happy. Since I'd gotten Eddie, I'd stopped talking to my friend Amber. It felt wrong, so I invited her to my restaurant. It was also a great opportunity to show off my perfect boyfriend to her. When Eddie and I arrived at the restaurant, Amber was already waiting at the table. She smiled at me, but for some reason didn't even look at Eddie. It was strange. We started chatting and Amber said, "Well, have you found your perfect guy?" I was very surprised and replied, "This is him, right here. His name is Eddie." Amber looked at me like I was crazy and cried, "What are you talking about? There's no one there." What was happening? There he was, sitting right next to me. Amber said I'd gone insane and made up a perfect boyfriend. She got up and left. I looked at Eddie, but he smiled and said that Amber was just jealous of me. That must be why she pretended not to see my boyfriend and insult me. The next day, Eddie and I went shopping. He was perfect, once again, pleased me and indulged me in everything. However, I began to have some suspicions. Was he real or just a figment of my imagination? I couldn't get my meeting with Amber out of my head. That evening, I decided to get rid of my suspicions and I went online. Strangely enough, the ad for the perfect boyfriends was gone. I decided to look for something about Perfect People Corporation where I bought Eddie. But there wasn't a single mention of an organization like that on the internet. It was all very strange. I really thought I was going crazy. A few days later, I threw a party at my house and invited all of my friends. Amber came too. She still couldn't see Eddie, even though everyone else was dancing with him. Maybe it was all in my head. Maybe I only saw what I wanted to see. When the party was in full swing, I asked Amber, "Can you truly not see him?" Amber was surprised.
Whom? I don't know what you mean.
The world swam around me. I said, "Here he is! Eddie, my perfect boyfriend! I just danced with him!" But Amber said,
"There's no one there. Look, I took a photo of you dancing. You were alone."
She showed me her phone, and everyone was in that photo, except for Eddie. And I felt dizzy. He was nowhere and everywhere at once. I saw my perfect Eddie in everyone around me. I was in shock. He wasn't real? He only existed in my head? But what was wrong with me? I must have lost my mind. I started to fall, but Amber caught me. When I came to, the party was over. There was no one there. Only Eddie was sitting across from me and looking at me sadly. I felt scared. "Why are you here? You aren't real!" Eddie replied that I'd been so desperate for a perfect boyfriend that he'd appeared, and now he would stay with me forever. I screamed and started running, but wherever I ran, he was there. He was following me. What had I done? I ran out of the house. I needed help. All I wanted to do was get rid of Eddie. The only person who understood me was my friend Amber. I went to her late at night and told her everything. I told her I'd lost my mind and I asked her for help. Amber calmed me down. She said she could help me. She knew a psychiatrist. Amber called him and took me to a private psychiatrist clinic the next day. And that's it. That's how I went crazy. They put me in pajamas and into a separate ward. I spent a lot of time talking to the doctor. He asked me about everything and ran different tests. In the time free of treatment, I took walks in a beautiful garden with other patients. Of course, the company left a lot to be desired, but I was still glad. As long as I didn't have to see Eddie again. I was given some meds that finally made my hallucinations go away. However, everything comes at a cost. After I was put into the clinic, I was immediately fired from my job. And people I called friends turned on me. I lost my old life. One day, we were sitting and watching TV after lunch. It was some boring society news. I smiled ruefully. I used to be a part of that crowd too. Then, a familiar face flashed across the screen. That's my friend Amber. She was at the opening of her debut film, which she directed. And then, next to her, I saw something that filled me with horror. It couldn't be. Like a ghost from the past, it was Eddie. He played one of the main roles in Amber's movie. And then I realized he was just a paid actor. Everything that had happened to me had been set up by my best friend. She'd hired an actor to play my perfect boyfriend, convinced me that Eddie didn't exist, and sent me to a psychiatric clinic. When Amber was interviewed, she said,
"This film is based on real events in my life. I once had a friend who took my loved one away. I embodied all my pain in this film."
And then I remembered. Last year, I actually had dated a guy who broke up with the daughter of the famous movie producers to be with me. How could I not have guessed it was Amber? I later broke up with him because, as usual, he didn't seem good enough for me. But he never returned to Amber. She must have loved him, it seemed. So, that's it. It had all been revenge. Amber couldn't forgive me for that. More than that, she'd been planning how to get back at me. And she did. I jumped up and started shouting that I was healthy, that I'd been set up. I pointed at the TV screen and tried to convince everyone that Eddie was real, that he wasn't a hallucination. But for some reason, they didn't believe me. The orderlies came, pinned me down, and gave me a sedative. I was being carried to the ward, and I could hear my doctor's words. He was saying that not only was I getting worse, the medication wasn't working and it was time to take drastic measures. I desperately need your help. You have to help me prove that Eddie is real. You've seen him too, right? Please, subscribe to the channel and share my story. What did I do to deserve this?